All right, so we do have some time for Q&A. So I wanted to just point out in WebEx, there is the Q&A window you should be able to see. So feel free to type in a question there. We are also able to take live questions. And I think we've got Paul Davis of American Banker who has the first question. And I think it's actually directed to Alden.
Hey, Alden. This is Paul. How are you doing? Okay. My question is, first of all, I know there was a lot of talk about funding. There was a lot of talk about lending in communities. My question's about investor capital for CDFIs like Liberty. I'm curious, what challenges you guys see when it comes to bringing in investor capital and how you go about addressing those challenges.
Thank you for the question. And we're in the middle of getting some new investor capital into the bank now because of more awareness. The investor capital coming into small community banks is pretty tough to begin with. Now, the investor capital into our bank will allow us to grow and get more deposits in so we can do more lending. For example, we have $100 million of mortgages that we have on our books that didn't qualify for the secondary market. Our goal is to get investor capital in and raise that number to 200 million because we know over the years how to underwrite the challenging credits, and we know it builds the community, and we know it stabilizes the community when we provide lending for home ownership.
Excellent. Thank you, Alden.
Can I add a real quick follow-up question on that, Alden?
We've got another question. I think we're running out of time.
That's okay. Alden, I can take it offline if you have time later.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you.
So, Samir, we've got a question for you. This is from Smith Williams. So did you find that it mattered whether a multi-market bank had a branch in a community in its decision to pull bank from a market in order to lend into the Katrina area? This was something I mentioned in my comments about the role of the branch.
Hi, so for the ones I call outsiders, the outcome variable is did the bank originate at least one loan in disaster areas at a given year, yes or no? So they just didn't have, prior to the storm, they just didn't have any loans. The ones that start entering, they just didn't have any loans prior to the storm. So it's not about them not having a branch. They didn't have a branch and they didn't have at least one loan. So they enter, those are brand new banks starting a business into a disaster market. So they don't necessarily have to do it by building a brick and mortar branch. They can just do it through a broker. So it's a financial entry rather than a physical branching process.
Yeah, I think maybe the recommendation is, so Smith is with the FDIC, maybe using the summary of deposit data as well to see whether branch presence affects that mortgage pullback.
I see what you're saying.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, so Lamont, I have a question for Dan related to his collection of the data, the CRA data specifically. As more and more sort of emerging technology tools like NLP and other things are being used to sort of accelerate how we can get access to large data sets, I'm curious if you used any of those techniques on this project.
We tried. That was our first thought, was to go that route, and based on sort of a sampling of the performance evaluations, we found that kind of the one consistency across everything with CRA examinations is inconsistency. That there was just no regularity, and so we thought that in order to trust the data, we needed to get a set of human eyes on it. Both Alden and Lamont sort of brought up CRA reform as something that may be coming down the pipe. The question of should this data be a little more regularized or a little more available to the public I'm certainly not speaking for the board here, but I will point out that last Monday the board voted on an advance notice of proposed rulemaking and is seeking public comment over the next 4 months. So if any of the audience members would like to have their voices heard on CRA reform, now would be a good time to submit those comments.
Okay, Lamont, I think we may have time for one more question. If you have one, I don't see any other in the Q&A section of the panel. But
Hey, Mike, if I could add to the CRA piece, I think there's some great opportunity to simplify some of the rules in CRA to make it more accountable. I think if you simplify the rules, you'll find more community banks more than willing to do lending in those areas. It's very complicated to do the lending and to qualify and to know how you're going to be rated on the lending. So I think to simplify those rules would help community lending in those areas that need it the most.
all right, well, thank you, Alden, and let me thank everybody, all of our panelists today. So Lamont, Alden, Daniel, and Samir, thank you for the great insights and discussions of the paper.